Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much. You know, I want to echo the remarks of Senator Schumer and the Chairman about China currency practices. And I heard what you said, but I've heard that before in terms of we're taking a hard look at it. Well, a hard look, we've been taking a hard look at this question for some time, it seems. And China makes a declaration that they're going to start moving in that direction, and then, it's like the Texas two-step, Ambassador. You take one step forward, you take 2 steps back. I think you might know a little bit about that in terms of dancing, that is. Well, they do a dance with us that's pretty harsh for us. There's a reason that China's our banker. Their prices, are lower. Our prices are higher. At the end of the day, they're collecting our dollars. And then, they come back and, they buy our treasury bills. And so they're our banker. We cannot consistently have the lack of the currency, floating the currency that they should allow to take place, as most countries in the world permit, to be manipulated as they do. So for so long as we're just taking a hard look, they're going to continue to collect our dollars. We're going to continue to, unfortunately, be, their customers at the bank. And that's not a good proposition for American businesses and products and services. So, I'd like to get a sense, what is wrong with, for example, the legislation that the Chairman and Senator Schumer have discussed, which basically says, look, if you allow your currency to float, great. But if you don't allow your currency to float, there's a tariff, there's a consequence. China does the right thing, they won't face any consequences. If China, or for that fact any other country, does the wrong thing, there is a consequence. What's wrong with that? How is that not protecting the interests of the United States, and at the same time being fair with practices that we're supposedly are supposed to be observing universally?
Senator Menendez, I have not, and I don't believe Ambassador Kirk has taken a position or indicated that we are opposed to that legislation.
Okay, so do you support it?
We have not taken a position on the legislation. I have not seen it. Be more than happy to look at it and comment and work with your office and Senator Schumer on it. But let me just say that when you ask why are we taking a hard look, given the scrutiny that our decision within the Department of Commerce will face on judicial review, the General Counsel's office, my office, and the office and the folks and the career people within the Department of International Administration are taking a hard look at the facts and the law of the specific case. And if they warrant a decision to investigate, we will investigate, and we will allow that investigation to proceed.
Well, I appreciate it, and your statement is pretty clear, and you're reading from it, and I understand that. Problem is that we see no concrete action that we take to get the Chinese to ultimately live under the same standards that we live under. We're not asking them for something that they should uniquely do. Every other country in the world largely lets their currency fluctuate. And this is about American, I hear about your desire to export more, but this is about American jobs. This is about America's economy at the end of the day. And right now, we're at a competitive disadvantage in this respect. So I support the Chairman. I hope he'll move forward, and I look forward to joining with him because, I see the G20. We were going to make this a major issue at the G20. Then I read comments that we're going to move away because China made, some comments that it's going to change its practice. Well, they've done that before, and then they go right back to the same business, and now we take it off the G20 agenda. That'd be absolutely wrong. So I hope we are going to pursue it vigorously at the G20 agenda. Let me ask you another area, which is intellectual property. Coming from New Jersey, that's incredibly important to us. China's policy to implement indigenous innovation policy is one of the huge problems. No other government in the world restricts government procurement market access on the basis of intellectual property or brand name ownership as China does. Requiring local IP ownership as a condition for access to the market is not only unprecedented, it fails to recognize the collaborative, cross-border, and global nature of research and development that produces innovation. Now, we sent you a letter to this. I appreciate your response to say you share our concerns, but I just like in the currency practice, other than sharing our concern and taking a hard look at it, what are we going to do? What are we going to do, for example, in another area of intellectual property protections that are very significant for this nation and certainly my state, is the area of piracy of copyrighted U.S. scientific, technical, and medical journals by Chinese companies. You know, in New Jersey, over 2,000 people are employed by such entities. So give me a sense of what we are going to be successfully, I hope, pursuing here as it relates to both the indigenous property issues, intellectual property issues, and this other area of intellectual journals and whatnot. I mean, between the currency practices, you know, I'll stop here and say the Chinese are great. They're prolific in filing complaints under the WTO. But boy, they do that, and at the same token, they're in the midst of doing a whole host of things that put us at a competitive disadvantage.
Senator, thank you for your comments. We agree with you. And I
won't ask you to exhibit the two-step either. So.
Well, in Texas, at least where I learned it, we at least try to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. That way we get somewhere. Listen, we share your frustration. We discussed this with both the chairman and Senator Wyden. The good news, we are attacking indigenous innovation and working with China in every form possible to get them to strengthen their intellectual property rights. We had some measure of progress during the recent strategic economic dialogue. We made our concerns on this indigenous innovation policy one of our top 3 initiatives. We did get China to agree not to move forward with the second circular. I think that's the word you were looking for, Mr. Chairman, that they had issued. But we've also forced him to a more honest discussion of how this would apply and extending it to government procurement as well. In terms of taking China on within the WTO, since I have been privileged to serve, and you has confirmed me as United States Trade Representative under President Obama, the U.S. Trade Rep's office has taken more cases successfully against China in the WTO than any other member of the WTO. A number of those cases have involved intellectual property rights. In particular, we're looking at copyrights and protection in those areas, those scientific journals that you referenced, and we have had some success in those. But we recognize this is going to be an ongoing effort until China develops its own indigenous entrepreneurial community that can join in making that case with us to China of what the real cost of pirating and theft of intellectual property is to the Chinese government. In the interim, we continue to push them to put in place a more effective law enforcement regime, and where appropriate, again, we have not hesitated to pursue actions and remedy within the WTO. If there is a specific matter involving one of your constituents that we can follow up with you on, we'll be happy to do so.